Hi there, welcome to Physical Science. I'm going to talk real briefly about my main goals for this class, what I can provide in the classroom, and then things that I can expect from you and your student at home. So, my main goals for the course are listed here in the top three here. The students will, one, be able to analyze and interpret data in a meaningful way. So that's something that's really hard to do through the textbook. Lots of times the textbook has to tell you, like, here's the data and here's what it means, since they're kind of learning it from home. And I want to make sure I can bring it in the classroom where here's the data, what do you think it means? They have to think through it. And then we can discuss the pros and the cons of their evidence and their reasoning, and they really can dive into the data. So that's something we can bring in the classroom. It lends itself to a great discussion too, because one student might think one thing and another thinks another. We can have the debate, and I think that's a powerful part of the classroom. Number two, I want to make sure that we can take those discussions about the data and really have a clear claim, evidence, and reasoning. That's a science skill that's really important and sets yourself up for any of the upper science levels. So anything that you go to in the science and anything in the world really, you have to be able to state what you think and provide some sort of support for that. And so I'm going to show students how to do that from a science perspective. And number three, we're going to look at the world in a greater detail through physical science. The big topics in this textbook are physics, chemistry, and earth science. Well, earth science is, I would say, more majority than the physics and the chemistry, which is great because that's a middle school topic. That's something that all middle schoolers are looking at, is more of an earth science. And in fact, the whole science world, education world, has driven more towards the earth science, to be honest, because it is so applicable to our daily life, right? So is physics and chem, though. I'm partial to that. Taking a look at the course, I'm going to be able to take one module a week, basically. Since we're only meeting 2 days a month, it really lends itself to really just doing one module every week we're there. Most of the time, we're going to be meeting the first and the third Wednesday of the month, which is great because then we can hit a module and then they'll have that 2 weeks kind of span to be able to get through it. Then we'll go to the next one. There are two topics in there, a physics topic and a weather topic that I think it's going to lend itself to needing 2 days. So that's the one I'm looking at to have longer. You'll see that in the syllabus below. So when I'm picking out of the chapter, there's actually a lot of terms and a lot of content in each chapter. Like a physics and chemistry book, they have a shorter amount of content that they've got in each chapter because there's a lot of math behind it and a lot of analysis. But a lot of the physical science, earth science topics, kind of like, they'll talk about the Earth's crust and all the different layers. There's a lot of vocab in there. It's kind of like on the biology side of things, lots of vocab, lots of looking at how these processes work, and then less of the math. Math comes later on in the book when we get to physics and chemistry. So during a lot of it, I have to kind of pick and choose what can I do in my 90 minutes. And so when I'm deciding that, I'm looking for labs, and I'm looking for labs that might be more difficult to do at home, labs that you may not have the equipment for, but I do, and also labs that follow the state standards. Now, the state standards, and what's good about that is that it's really pertinent to this age group. And so I know that it's something that they can handle and something that's applicable. And so those are the ones I'm kind of leaning towards to make sure I pick those out of the chapters. That also makes sure that your student kind of knows what all other students at their same age kind of knows. And so that's why I thought I would pick those ones. I picked my labs and what I do in class based on those kind of things. What can we do with discussions? What kind of lab equipment do you not have that perhaps I do? And then looking at the state standards, make sure they get those big ideas that they should get at this age. Okay, so what I'm expecting from the students is just to come prepared for class. That could mean many different things, but mostly it's reading through the chapters. I'm not asking them to read through the chapters before class very often. So taking a look at the syllabus here, I've got most of it all planned. I've got about 3 days I'm kind of thinking through my head, like, oh, how do I want to do this? Those are later on in the year. But like taking a look before class, page 1 through 9, these pages, or the pages that I might have them read, might be more of a history kind of thing. Like if they're talking about Galileo, the history of Galileo and how he grew up. A lot of times these scientists have a great, rich, God-based background to them, and the textbook does a good job of showing that. But if there's a specific skill I want them to know, then I'm going to put that in there. So your goal is to know how to calculate speed. So after they read that, they should know how to calculate speed. But if it's just, hey, let's read this, let's kind of get a little background, I don't expect too much coming out of them, then I'll just put the page numbers. So, but most of the time I want to hit as much as I can in class because that gives me a great time to do inquiry with the students before they've read everything and get all the answers. That's a huge science skill. You don't have all the answers, how will you find them? And if they read all the answers in the textbook, it doesn't lend itself to as much discussion. So that's why I choose not to do as much before class. But that does give you about a week and a half before, or 2 weeks before the next class to get the whole module done. Way I'm going to be communicating to you is through Google Classroom, and that's where you'll see any of the grades, and it'll also be where I'm going to always post up an announcement for the week. So this is what we did in class, and this is what we're going to be doing next week. So that's where you'll find all that information. As for the grades, if we do any labs in class, you'll see that posted up there, and if they don't finish in class, they can always turn it in online. I'll go to Google Classroom in a second, but you'll also see this rubric for each of the students. Now, I don't currently have it up there because I'm waiting for everybody to enroll into the class. I don't have everybody into the Google Classroom, and so then I'm afraid that it won't go up to that student if I post it right now. But what we're going to be working on is, like I said, a claim, evidence, and reasoning. Can you support what you're saying? So let's say I'm going to grade like the evidence in September, their evidence skills. They might be down here in the C range, and that's okay because they're just learning how to show their evidence and have the right type of evidence. And so then I'll put a date and some notations. Maybe we look at evidence again and I grade it the next month. And they move themselves up to A because they really learn like, oh, this is what I didn't do right, and now I got it. Then you'll see the new date here. So this rubric will be at the top of Google Classroom, and you'll see how your students progressing throughout the year. If they move backwards, move forward, hopefully we can always move towards the A. That by the end of the year, I'm a big growth mindset kind of person. Like, you may not know it right away, that's okay. But by the end of the year, let's kind of get this all set. So I'm hoping this rubric can really show you how your student's growing throughout the year. So that'll be there. So if you choose to assign grades to your student, you can be looking at all the grades I have posted, as well as how they do on their tests at home. I'm not doing any tests in class. That'll be from the textbook, or if you choose to do tests at home, that's completely up to you. What I'm going to be working on is grading labs, and their lab skills are mostly going to be all CER stuff, because that's the whole basis of science. Okay, so then how will I communicate to you? Once again, that's in Google Classroom. You'll see an announcement each week. This is what we did, this is what they need to do for next week, that kind of thing. If they're missing any labs, you'll be able to see that in the grade section. Any of the classwork or any of the labs that we do will be posted there. So if, let's say they turn in a lab right at the end of the hour of class, then I'm going to take that in, I'm going to grade it so that the next day I can post on here what their grade is. I think it's really important to get it right away. If they had to wait 2 weeks to see a lab they just did, they're not going to care about it, right? They're kind of like, well, I guess I didn't do so well, or yay, I did great, but they're not really analyzing the feedback I have provided for them there. So I want to make sure to post that up. You'll get that Thursday or Friday right after class. Get the grades up for them. And you'll see any like snapshots of their actual lab just for that student. So they'll have their own personal lab, and then I'll have like a link down there, and they can click on it to see the handwritten work they might have or the handwritten comments from me. So you can really see how they did. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I want to cover. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, certainly let me know.